Every one of you watching this screen, look out.
Anything can happen in the next half hour.
What did I tell you about cartoons?
They've got a lot of brains, and they've got a lot of chutzpah.
Tell me how comic books make you feel, Dave.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious, and don't call me Shirley.
Hello, this is Frantz Kantor, cartoonist, illustrator, toon talker, and I'm here with
Jim Bridges, and I'm the president of the Australian Cartoon Museum here in downtown Docklands, Melbourne.
Did you have to have a think about that?
During lockdown.
Yeah, it's a little bit far away from the mic. Hello there, Jim Bridges!
Hello.
So, what are we looking at today? This is Vertigo DC Comics. Vertigo, of course, is the highbrow version of DC. That's got nothing to do with superheroes.
And it's got nothing to do with Alfred Hitchcock.
That's a film reference.
Yes.
And so William Hope Hodgson's The House on the Borderland. William Hope Hodgson, of course, is a classical writer. Did a lot of horror stories. And like Edgar Allan Poe, this is an illustrated novel by Richard Corben, who unfortunately passed away a few months ago, 6 months ago. And this is a wraparound cover. This is very unusual for Richard Corben's work, so I don't know if you're familiar with his work. He does this beautiful underlighting and sculptural, beautiful use of blacks, but the forms that he draws are very, very three-dimensional. They have a lot of form, and he's a perfect artist if you wanted to draw Edgar Allan Poe stories, or indeed H.P. Lovecraft or anything like that. So he has a beautiful take on the horror genre, and it looks very, very spooky and appropriate. So this is a lovely book. I've loved reading this. This is a little bit unusual for Richard Corben because the colours are more muted than he's want to explore in Den or any of the other.
He didn't do the colours.
No, he didn't. The colours,
which is unusual for him because he was famous. He became famous for his colour.
Yes, and I must say I do prefer these colours because I must say I do prefer these colours because it makes the blacks and the line work, the beautiful pen work that he did, stand out. So, he's a really underrated artist as far as the pen work's concerned. I read all of his underground comics, and comics from Eerie and Vampirella and Creepy, of course, and a lot of them were in full color, glaring color, because he would actually get in and manipulate the colors on the plates in the printing process. So he knew his stuff as far as printing was concerned.
Yeah, the color was unique.
Yes,
there was nobody like him, like in even the European comics.
Yeah,
who were streets ahead of the Americans when it came to color.
Yeah, because he understood the printing process. He'd get in there and rub back the black from the black plate so that the pinks and the blues would flare out in the CMYK printing process. And that's, even in a full-color magazine like Heavy Metal or Metal Hurlant, that was an extraordinary, powerful experience watching reading Corben's comics. Now he was a great guy. He was a bodybuilder, and most of the characters were photographed from. The reference was photographed from himself. He used to shoot his own reference. The reason is because he could get a lot of these really accurate shadows, darks and lights, and anatomy in there, because he was a consummate anatomist. So all of the anatomy was brilliantly drawn. and indeed the light. So, with black and white, it's more a case of it's just as important, the black areas, as it is in the lit areas. So, it's kind of film noir in a sense.
Horror film noir.
Yeah, horror is a very, film noir works well in horror. There's no disputing it, and this is like testament to that style.
Also,
of,
he had a
modelling,
degree of caricature with the work as well.
Yeah,
and you'll see that in this book.
well, these were drawn from photographs, so that they have a certain a realistic reference, but they were drawn freehand, so he changes the proportions and things. In Den, for example, if you remember Den, he was naked in that story and caricatured certain body proportions in the comic became a thing. It became a trope, sort of like the Tom of Finland version of comics.
But the anatomy of his women wasn't that stylized. They were just turned into just dolls, really. Compared to the males.
Well, they're always big-breasted and buxom characters. But what I found really fascinating was it's like the attention to detail. Look at this, the cross-hatching in the shadows of this street. He does really accurate, really beautiful settings. And not only that, but the background characters, the ones that are going to get ripped in half in the next page, right? He lovingly describes their expressions, it draws their expressions. It's such an interesting way. And he would have these sort of cropped action scenes or a sequence. This is quite a common thing in Corben comics. You'd have this smash at the end of a sequence of frames starting off. So you kind of see it's like almost an animated experience, in certain parts of the comic. So you get the wide shots, the down shots, looking at scene establishing, and then mid shots and close-ups, and then insets, and it's a very filmic way of explaining a comic, and I always found that fascinating, because comparing him to, say, Mobius was chalk and cheese. Mobius was another heavy hitter in heavy metal, Metal Hurlant.
Corben's very masculine in everything he does.
Masculine?
Yeah.
Is that like masculine but with potatoes?
That's right. Very mash-up,
A mash-up. Potatoes and
well, I mean,
and
very
testosterone.
very strong style.
Macho potato.
We love our macho potatoes.
I'm glad you got that out of your system. This book in
Look
particular,
at how beautiful the colours are.
that's what I was about to say.
Awesome.
I don't like the colours in a lot of modern comics, and that's probably 90% of them. The colours in this is excellent. It's subtle too.
Well, this is taking from the Hellboy experience of comics. So if you remember back to Hellboy, have we done Hellboy before?
Yeah,
Probably.
I have a feeling
We've done a little bit of Hellboy.
Was
Mignola?
Yeah, was he influenced by Corben at all? Do you reckon?
Oh, he worked with Corben. Corben's done some massive Hellboy comics.
Yeah, I know
Hellboy
that,
in Mexico.
But I'm just saying that.
Yeah.
Do you think he was influenced?
You must be influenced by him if you're at all interested in modelling. Right?
Corben
Which
was
means
doing
the
work in the
effect of
60s.
light and shade.
He was doing work in the 60s.
Yeah.
And Mike wasn't born then, was he?
Yeah. He's my age.
Okay.
So,
And how old are you?
and so the colours are very muted and very, what would you call them? What's
I call them masculine colours. I call them masculine colours.
masculine?
Yeah.
So-
this is lovely. Look,
Are you-
even with the white, he manages to somehow incorporate. I don't know. It's just perfectly balanced.
Yeah. So instead of doing, it's an interesting thing as far as the composition is concerned. He does these sort of insets, these big panels. I do that too in comics. So one panel is big, and then you've got the other panels which are inset into the big panel, so that you get a bleed of
his
story.
His detailing and his cross-hatching makes you look at it leads you into another world.
Yeah,
you get this otherworldly feeling with his drawing.
Yeah,
it's
but
not just someone going through the usual story in a comic, you know.
Exactly, but this color scheme, the what do they call it in the color palette field? It's not complementary. It's the opposite. It's
uncomplimentary.
No, I was going to say anachronistic, but it's not true. It's analogous. So the colours are close to each other on the colour wheel, like the orange is next to the yellow, which is next to the green, which is next to the blue. So these are colours that commonly happen in nature. And what happens is it's a restful experience. It's an easier way of colouring something and making it look good.
The other thing about his early comics, the colour was graduated in a background. It was graduated. And
there's a lot of colour work.
Comic colour in comics was just
flat. Usually, yeah.
But
the more modelling they put in, it's kind of a weird thing, but the more modelling you put in the colour of the process, the colouring process, the more you're taking your eyes away from the line work, and all of the heavy lifting is done with this beautiful use of blacks. So you really do need that pen line to be visible. So something approaching a Linclair style. Linclair is clean line, which is a French technique.
Too many colours today in comics are too dark.
And see, a little bit of a gradient here is fine, but you know, wherever else the details are, you see the details because the colours are not distracting you.
You know, I get to the horror. Come on, get to the horror.
Roar.
Wow, I'm impressed.
So
get to the horror. Move it along.
So William Hope Hodgson's stories very much, in the classic horror vein, where you get the setup and there's something, an eldritch horror thing like H.P. Lovecraft. Something unspoken and unseen. So, it's a slow build-up. That's what I mean. So we're down into, the 10th page or something, and now you start to get into the spooky parts of the comic, and you can see the tone has changed into purples and blues and greens. So they're getting in more.
Don't they all go well with the blacks?
Yeah, but look how beautifully you can tell the brushwork and the pen work. Of the characters, and when he uses the shadows, when he uses drop shadows and things like the cast shadows, they're very much stronger for that experience. Look at that beautiful silhouette. It's incredibly evocative work, and this book. There is another book which I've been trying to locate. I think I might have lent it to somebody, and that is something we're going to look at again. It's another Corben book, similarly coloured, but
is it in the Vertigo series?
I believe, I'm not sure. I'd have to have a look. I'd have to have a look for it. I think it's a Poe story, so it could be House on
the Fall of Ocean.
Yeah, something like another house story. Anyway, so spooky old houses were the trope of the time and still today. It's a horrific story, but you can see how he's perfectly suited to this genre. I mean, these are lovely expressions, and even these little inset close-ups. It's just beautiful.
Very cinematic.
Yeah, it's cinematic, but at the same time, it's using the graphic possibilities of a comic page. So it's a cinematic experience mashed up with comics. But look at this. This is right out. I mean, I don't know who came. I guess actually he would have come up with this idea first of these sort of close-ups. This sort of it's kind of an allegorical horror or a poetic form of horror, where you've got these little insets that take you away from the main action but give you a very spooky gothic feel, because gothic horror is more about the feeling
the atmosphere.
Of the atmosphere, thanks, rather than the actual horror itself. And that's what's so popular, because it's very sort of very ethereal and emotional.
But there's no tall blondes.
But this is
with silky dresses running around in the dark. Yes.
Well, not yet.
No, there's none.
Well, there may be later on. We'll see. Anyway, this sort of inset idea that this sort of lyrical horror, of course, is used in Hellboy.
Yes.
To great effect. So,
great effect.
To answer your first question, is he influenced by Corben? Yes, I think he would be, because I remember Corben used to use these particularly well in the 70s. Or in the 80s, actually, when I found them. So not the 70s. So beautiful. Look, even with his, his animal expressions, they're just, they're anatomically... some of them are probably need a little bit more, but they're so
dogs and that,
three-dimensional and
they're
modeled,
very good,
beautiful,
they're cropped beautifully. They're just cropped beautifully.
He does beautiful. He does really beautiful. What are they called? Anthropomorphic animals, werewolves, and things like that. Massive. Absolutely, I've never seen anyone do a better werewolf than him.
His early stuff.
Yeah, maybe Frazetta. But then Frazetta's, in paintings.
Yeah,
he does it so well in comics, werewolves, just brilliantly. No one can do it better than him. So here you see, these sort of characters, and see all the research, lovingly research the outfits and the wardrobe of the characters, placing them right into the period piece, and and even like. Even little branches, they're not quick like. No, they all have texture and
Bernie Richardson stuff, aren't they? Richardson stuff.
Wrightson, yeah, Bernie Wrightson. Well, Bernie Wrightson's a contemporary of Corben.
Yeah.
So again, we should actually do. I don't have the Bernie Wrightson treasury. We should do a book bite of Bernie Wrightson's work, because that's massive too. And unfortunately, he died quite recently.
Did he? I didn't know that. Okay.
So,
he did the best Frankenstein of all time.
We should do Frankenstein. I think I may have built it.
Absolutely wonderful.
At some point.
That's a great splash page.
Yeah, that is magnificent. So he's kind of known for this sort of the build-up and the sudden reveal, this big splash page, this big punchy explanation of the character, which is again lovingly done. Look, this is stippling and the sort of crosshatch and basket weave effect and things, but everything has a three-dimensional quality to it. Look at this, dust, clouds of dust and things. It's probably a little bit darker than you would have expected, but it's so beautifully done. This is somebody enjoying this work. You can tell that he's enjoyed it. And looking at it in muted colours like that, so you can actually get into the line work and all of the details that he's actually put in, is so beautiful. This is one of my favourite books of Corben's. So even they use primary colours, obviously, but he resists the use of primaries as background colours. So these are muted. So everything is toned down to respect the line work, and that's why I love this. That's a beautiful action shot.
That's how it should be.
Yeah,
the line work tells the story.
Yeah. So there's lots and lots of, and occasionally you get humorous elements that pop in, which just make it magical.
I find his work very frightening.
It's frightening, but also can be funny too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And very,
at the end of the action, you'll crack jokes and stuff, and it's sort of the ends philosophically, but putting a bit of humour in there, makes it more chilling. I find it more chilling.
Yeah,
but I find his work very frightening when you're reading it. It's very, you're a child again and you're scared.
Yeah.
And they're perfect stories to tell kids before they go to bed. so they don't sleep.
Well, my father used to tell me the most violent werewolf stories.
Did he?
German werewolf stories when I was...
German werewolf stories. Oh, they're the most violent ones.
Yeah, and look, all these little monsters, he fills up the panels with this sort of underground, the dwellers in the dark. It's all about that, the psychological horror. And you'll only partially see them. Most of them would be in shadow. But you see just enough to get the feeling across.
In movies,
it's so apt for this.
In movies, they shoot
this genre.
They shoot day for night or night for day, right?
Yeah,
day for night, and that is because there's less shadows, and they just they turn down the thing on the camera to not let that much light in. And of course, his work looks like a lot of it's day for night. It's got this special glow about it at night time,
Yeah.
You can still see all the action and stuff. Whereas, in reality, a lot of dark stuff at night is dark, very dark, especially in modern comics.
Well, Mignola would probably treat this slightly differently. He would have less atmosphere, less detail in the background.
Yes.
So you get a lot of dark shadows and things, which is more traditionally a film noir effect. But this, the details that he does give us really add to the experience. The veins and the claws and the things.
Detail and the colour in particular, the muted colour, really give you. This is you're in a unique Corben world.
Well, you're dealing with a grotesque, aren't you? You're dealing with somebody who metamorphoses into, or these creatures have recognisable aspects, like a dog face or something like that. So you need to really, now that you've been introduced to them a few pages ago, you really need to look at how ugly and beautiful that they are. He'll do things like strange textures and things he'll put in, just to intrigue you. This sort of cracked skin and stuff and wrinkles that go overboard. It's just magical. And again, it just tells you how much fun he's had with this process. This page is a hell of a lot of fun. Chunk, axe in the head, axe in the back of the head. Lots of fun. Lots of fun to be had. That's beautiful. That's a lovely shot. That one there, that drawing. Sort of I don't know what that is, a pyramid or roof. But yeah, it's just amazing how well he constructs this world and keeps the drama happening and pertinent and really on genre. This is perfect work.
On genre.
This is great. Is that, little pig trotters.
Is that 2 words or
little
one?
Pig trotters.
On genre. Is that 2 words?
Could be 3. This is lovely.
That's an interesting picture.
Yeah, again, because of the period, you're touching on this sort of eldritch horror, this sort of the time before time sort of thing. So, the Cthulhu mythos and all that sort of Cthulhu mythos and things like that. It's just, just adds to the dramatic ending and resolution of the characters. They're resigned to their fate a lot of the time, which again is more of a film noir trope. So it doesn't end well for the heroes. Some great. Look at how beautiful these colours are. That's a slow build-up of expressions and angers on model.
All comics are done on computer now with colouring in particular.
Well, I have to. It's the easiest.
Yeah,
way
I know,
to
but I mean, why can't people follow his line? I mean, the flat colour in modern comics is awful. I think it just smothers the drawing.
You mean the unflat colour?
Yeah, the dark.
Multicolours.
They're very dark colours. Very dark.
It's because they're after a different experience.
Yeah, but
they're after the Avengers.
But they smudge the lines. They smudge the lines. They smudge the. They cover up the line work.
A lot of times. I mean, it's easier to put in a blur or something if you swing, if you want to get a feeling of action. He resists that because he's working in pen line. You need to see the pen line rather than a filter.
That's right.
So, it's not appropriate to use motion blurs and things like that with his work. And, but everywhere you'll see these beautiful studies. It's so much love involved in this drawing process. Look how beautiful that eye is, how three-dimensional it is. It's like a jewel. It's lovely, and it's semi-stylized. It's not absolutely photographically real, but there's enough in there to show how three-dimensional it is, and consistent with his lighting too. So it's really incredibly powerful. Close-ups again, he does really, really well, and these action scenes are almost have a decorative effect. This splashing water. So nothing is sort of
splash.
Nothing is without study. And even at the end of it, he didn't have to, but he put the dog shaking himself as he would. So he's thought about this. He's planned this out beautifully, so well.
Well, he didn't walk.
And even the nude scenes are muted, and
he didn't work within the sort of the
mainstream comic.
No, so he had time to do stuff.
He worked outside of the mainstream comic, okay. So he put a lot of work in it.
So he wouldn't be affected by the deadlines.
Not as much.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of work involved here. There's a lot of work here.
Yeah.
To study, to do shadows, if convincingly like he would rely on photographs or
another Jim
sculptures.
Steranko effect.
Yeah.
Joke.
Okay.
From Dead Man.
Oh, okay. So he would do sculptures as well. He's done a few films.
Has he?
Yeah, some short films as well. So they all have a consistency about them, and they were relatively focused on either himself or his girlfriend or his characters that are easily recognizable or referenced. So that's why you get all of this beautifully modeled level of detail, realism. So they just look right, they feel right, even though that they're caricatured or distorted, really beautifully. They have a resonance to realism, And a lot of the poses like this is incredibly awkward and quite like if you were to draw it from your imagination, you'd never in a million years draw that pose. It's too awkward. Look at the positioning of the toes. So, referencing photographs obviously gives you excellent reference for the shadows, which is what this piece is crying out. That's what this comic is all about. It's all about the shadows because it's a horror comic. And even the foreshortening on this is referenced from photographs as well. So there's a lot there. There's a lot of study. There's a lot of trouble he's gone to. It's an interesting drawing. That's beautiful. But again, he'll mesh this sort of erotic with horror. But he does it really well. Like someone like Wrightson wouldn't necessarily be able to do an erotic form of horror effectively.
No.
But Corben, bang on, absolutely. So that they kind of fit together in some uncomfortable dream. So again, it's the referencing the photographs and the modelling he will do with little sculptures and things to give you this sort of accurate shadows, the underlighting. This is quite hard to convincingly portray.
Lots of underlighting.
Lots of extreme lighting, like really, intense contrasts. It's beautiful.
So he whacks a torch under his chin and takes a photograph of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that, obviously today it's a lot easier because you've got a camera in your pocket all the time with a phone. So, it's a good thing to do, I think, to at least give your drawings a little bit of extra help, certainly with the shadows. There's no way you're going to remember all of the intricate shadow work from your imagination. So referencing photographs this is a beautiful morph. Cloud to pig head to something else. Let's just look at the stippling involved here. Not many people like stippling because it takes a long time. It's a very slow process of creating halftone. And this is getting more like Virgil Finlay's. We should do a Virgil Finlay.
We should.
You should Google Virgil Finlay.
Look at that top head.
Yeah. So this comes from obviously, motion. This is his version of motion blur.
That's right. The hard way.
But it works for this concept. Not everybody should do this, but he has to do that.
Look at this little panel here.
Because it would be wrong if it was blurred with a. Yeah, look how the panels themselves are affected by the impact. The falling building, the house of Usher crashing, and it's breaking the panel structure as well. So this is a really interesting. See how crooked they are? They're falling down. This lovely feeling that he gets instills into the story, and of course you're at the end now. You're at the where the character's about to die or meet his fate, and he meets it with a resolute heart. The characters converging. Beautiful. Look how lovingly they're presented. And of course, it's the end of their world or something. Does he come out of this all right? We don't know. Let's continue. So he does, and there's probably, he becomes a geezer telling the story.
A geezer, as opposed to a
Look at this.
goomer.
This is lovely, isn't it? I would love to see. He does boars really well. He would be fantastic to do an illustration of Princess Mononoke's jungle god, wouldn't he? It'd be that would be magic if he did that.
Or animated style.
Look at this geezer.
Animated film.
How beautiful is that geezer's face?
Oh, he's beautiful. Beautiful.
Look at the details, the scars.
There's Mrs. Geezer over here.
And there's his love. There's his dog. His dog always gets bitten and killed and things. Anyway, dogs lived a long time. I haven't read this obviously because there's lots of words in it. But I've read
there's too many words in it. Too many words.
Yeah, I don't read reading. I read writing.
Get rid of the words.
I don't read writing. I read reading.
Yes. And who's the famous person who came up with that expression first?
Bob Seger. So
Nice try.
yeah, he did Popeye. Jesus, the door is opening, and then it ends. So they win in the end. The baddies, the eldritch monsters.
This sort of pattern sticks out a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So
well, they're
that's
representing
not Kirby Crackle. That's Corben Bubbles. There's some more. Look.
Well, they're representing spotlights, so they're torchlights that reveal the horror. Which is another interesting thing. He does that. He's done that a few times in comics, where he's had characters revealed by torchlight, and that's actually filtered into some horror films. And I'm pretty sure they're referencing him, because I haven't seen anything done that.
Do you think
before he did it?
You know how Spielberg uses torches?
Yeah.
Do you think he was influenced by Corben?
Well, Spielberg references a lot of comics. He reads a lot of comics and animation. He's often referenced Lupin comics and films, cartoons.
See, this is interesting. Dunk, dunk, dunk.
Yeah.
And you've got all that, but dunk, dunk, it still continues to
On
a
the
certain
next
extent.
page.
No, it's still like there to there.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
good.
it's a part of continuity. is king in film.
Yeah, but you
and
have
in
to go
comics.
from here too, but it's still that way. It works out both ways. That's
Yeah,
what
we
I'm
can
saying.
see that this sequence of
Yeah.
underneath the cliff is
Yeah.
coloured separately to the one above the cliff.
Yeah.
You know, and then continues on. It's a long fall. These are great. Again, you know, the way that his characters die, they die beautifully and really
beautifully.
dramatically.
Beautiful deaths.
Lovely deaths. Fantastic. And these little insets are, you know, are really, they grab your attention and make you, you know, really connect with the characters, which is part of the horror experience. You need a character to connect to so that you get scared
Yes.
along with the character.
Extraordinary page.
It is. Look at that. So he loves horror. He loves horror. He loves these sort of boar creatures, you know, these sort of anthropomorphic monsters that have at once horror and pathos in their
And more
in their
teeth than they
makeup.
should.
Yeah. But, you know, beautifully, incredibly well modelled. Look at the biceps and the veins and things popping and the cracked skin and things. Everything has an incredible textural, three-dimensional property to it. Again, with the disorienting version, aspect of the torchlights.
We moved into another comic here.
And the reveals, the torch reveal of, the intensity of
moved
light.
into another comic here.
Yeah, that's more Steranko. The acid trips. Lovely use of perspective. Again, look at the pen work involved in this stuff.
And it's not lost on the colouring, which is rare. It's Steranko-ish.
Yeah, this is a sort of a Miller moment. Frank Miller. The reverse silhouette. That's Steranko-ish. Yeah. The nightmare, the acid trip. Very unusual. Some of the experiences, you know, these and these sort of graphic elements are new to him. So they're more experimental. That's another thing which I like about this, because it goes into the mental horror, the imagined horror. This is very running from your nightmares. So that the Dali experience. Again, you know, it's a different aspect to horror, isn't it? Is it real? Or is it imagined? We don't know. So it ends with the last page is that gothic. Was it? May it never return in my time. That place, the house on the borderland. So it's beautiful, and there it is with more detritus and things like that. But this is a dream sequence. This is very, very, very cool. There he is, the man himself, Richard Corben, and sadly missed. Some lovely work there.
Yeah, you want to check the black and white? Just have a close look for a while.
Some lovely, lovely pieces. So that's The House on the Borderland, and by Richard Corben. It'll be sadly missed. This is a Vertigo comic. Have a look for it in all good bookstores,
And don't read it before you go to bed.
Yeah, it is a good story.
This is Jim Bridges.
And Frantz Kantor saying we'll catch you next time. Bye bye.
Thanks for the sour persimmons, cousin.